Hi, I'm Simon K. Jones, and this is the audio version of Tales from the Triverse, and this is Gods and Robots, Part 3. Brulia, Palinor, 3208, Bright Sun. It was a rare occasion when Ellen Bryn had no data on a target. She was an encyclopedia of every hostile flora and fauna on Palinor, complete with knowledge of where to find them, what they ate, how they hunted and attacked, and how to take them down. Backed up by the 6 blades, she'd happily go up against anything the planet had to offer. The thing hovering above Brulia was not of Palinor. The creatures it had spewed out were not of Palinor. She knew of megaships, of course, had seen pictures, and recognised the thing in the sky as such, but had never theorised that they would ever need to fight one. Its capabilities and limits were unknown, as were those of the bipedal robot it had ejected. There were human-sized hosts on Max Earth, and they were known to travel to Mid-Earth, but, as far as she knew, had never been seen on Palinor. So many unknowns meant danger. Still, she was a quick learner. She watched from an adjacent rooftop as Ngark seized the robot and dragged it from the tower, aided by a concussive blast from Eric. Even with the weight of the Koth and Eric's magic, the robot was able to resist for a moment. Then it crashed down to the ground, Ngark on top and trying to pin it. The robot writhed, evidently a match for Koth's strength, and considerably faster. They scrabbled, limbs grabbing for a hold. Then the robot managed to get its legs beneath Ngark and send them flying across the street. Extending their wings, Ngark easily controlled their backwards momentum, slowing to a gentle glide, and avoiding hitting a wall before lowering gracefully to the ground. Emerging from a doorway, Halbad swung his axe into the side of the robot's head. It was jolted to the side, but the axe bounced off, spinning away, and knocking Halbad off balance. He was left open on one side as the robot advanced. Ellen Bryn fired a hooked and roped arrow she would normally use for grappling, her aim perfectly wrapping around the robot's waist. She looped her end of the rope around the chimney and jumped from the roof, pulling it tight and giving Halbad a vital extra second to recover. The robot turned and sliced at the rope, then picked up the dropped axe, flinging it in Ellen Bryn's direction. She evaded with ease, the axe head embedding harmlessly into the stonework behind her. Moving in, she pulled daggers from her belt and dived, and darted around the robot, looking for weak points, analysing its movement, trying to read its tactics. It was fast, almost to the point of seeming erratic, but there was definitely purpose in its dodges and feints and jabs. It was a challenge for even an Ain-Fa to avoid the incoming attacks, and a human would likely have no chance of evading, hence Halbad being caught unawares. As it was, she was operating at the limits of what she could handle. She had at least distracted it away from Halbad, giving him a moment to recover, but there was no situation in which Ellen Bryn would be able to land a meaningful hit on the thing, and it was only a matter of time until it wore her down. A spear thrust past her head, the robot only barely evading. It was Celine, piling in with both of her weapons, their length giving her the ability to maintain some healthy distance. The two of them danced around the robot, which pirouetted and cartwheeled away from their every move. "Bored now," roared Ngark, barely giving either of them time to get clear, before their superheated plasma drenched the robot in flame. Burning but seemingly unconcerned, it twisted back towards the Koth, who had risen into the air on their wings. The fire on the robot's body intensified, encasing it and blooming as if fanned by an invisible hand, which wasn't too far from the truth. Eric had jumped from the tower, breaking his fall with a gravity bubble, and was now approaching with both arms outstretched. He drew signs, continually resetting and recasting, changing the pattern, altering the targeting, wrapping the robot in a physiologist's cloak. A warping of local space that had many practical uses and more than a little offensive potential. The fire spread across the robot's body like liquid, never escaping into the air or onto the ground, never running out of fuel or extinguishing. Eric was channeling oxygen to it, while concentrating it into a thin epidermal layer. Ellen Bryn recalled this particular spell being known as Fire Skin. A human or Ain-Fa would already be dead and burned to a crisp. It would likely take down a Koth. The robot kept moving, though it seemed confused or perhaps partially blinded from the flames enveloping its senses. Ellen Bryn was already starting to piece together the details, from the position of the joints and the movement of pistons and servos, to the faceless head and the heavily protected torso. She was mapping its movements and responses, as she had countless organic creatures, drawing a mental map of its functions and capabilities. There would be a weakness, waiting to be found. "Hubris is unbefitting a megaship of Max Earth," Eric said, as he advanced. "Your counters are feeble, your reactions sluggish. You consume immense energies to do almost nothing. Stop disappointing me." The robot writhed, and beneath the fire Ellen Bryn thought she perceived something had changed. The texture, perhaps, or the colour of its plating. "You lack subtlety," Eric continued, goading the robot. "You try to brute force your way to spellcasting, but know nothing of nuance. You are all text, and no subtext, noise and fury without meaning. Superintelligence you may be, but in this realm I am the master." Ellen Bryn signalled to Celine, a series of hand gestures she would immediately understand. There was a nod, then one of her weapons lanced through the air, passing through a part of the robot and embedding deep into the ground. Impaled, the robot was pinned, at least momentarily. "Eric, stop flirting with it," Halberd said, retrieving his axe, "and kill the fucker." Celine thrust her other spear into the robot, the blade passing through newly revealed gaps in its body. It strained against its restraints, the spears buckling a little from the strain. Ellen Bryn saw Eric adjusting his spell, and the flame rushed away to nothing. Then the robot slumped, as if pressed down by a weight from above. "It's still trying to counter my spells," he said, "and I don't think those spears will hold it in place for long." Halberd nodded, hefting his axe in both hands. "Ellen Bryn, how do we kill it?" The fires having gone out, the robot's body was once again easily visible, except it had been reduced. Gone were the smooth platings that had looked more like armour than skin, leaving behind a metal skeleton. There were sealed compartments all through the chest area, and the head remained a sealed unit. Striding up, Ngark reached out a massive clawed hand and grabbed at the head. Tilting it to one side, they closed their jaws over the robot's neck and bit down, severing the cables and metal tendons. A deep growl, the sound of a volcano preparing to erupt, and then the robot was beheaded. Ngark lifted it, dropped it, and swung their leg, kicking it off the side of the mazer. "That was a pretty good kick," noted Celine. Ngark grinned and flicked up both thumbs. The robot thrashed, still very much alive. It strained against the spears, metal creaking against metal. Walking around the prone machine, Ellen Bryn examined its torso. The head might have been its eyes and ears, but its brain is likely in the central torso. Better protected. I'm surprised it uses a bipedal frame. Seems inefficient. Eric sniffed loudly. Inefficient is a good word to describe it. "Less of the science talk," Halberd said, holding up a hand. "I wanted a kill strategy. Where's its heart, its brain, or whatever this thing would have?" A spherical container in the centre of the burned torso seemed like the likeliest candidate. "That's the most heavily protected compartment. Open it." Gesturing to Ngark to follow suit, Halberd gripped one side of the chest and wrenched at it, using the handle of his axe as a lever. The effort was clearly immense, but they managed to prise open the metal ribcage. Halberd grunted. "Now what?" "Allow me," Eric said, stepping closer. "Hold those spears in place. I don't want this thing grabbing at me." He released his spells, then concentrated a new one on the sphere. At first nothing happened. Then the casing began to dent and peel, and then a panel ricocheted away and across the street. "Oh, that's pretty," Ngark said, leaning over to see into the open sphere. Inside was a flash of light, moving rapidly back and forth. The robot squirmed, held down by the others and the buckling spears. Celine looked to Ellen Bryn. "Any ideas?" They were all looking at her, expectantly, waiting for her to come up with a solution. "When in doubt," she said, drawing an arrow and taking aim with her bow. "Ngark?" The Koth grinned and spat a glob of magma onto the arrowhead. It ignited, the flame licking up the shaft. "Step away, everyone." They did as she asked, and the robot reared up, seizing the moment to try to break free. She loosed her arrow, the aim perfect, and it pierced into the glowing light within the sphere. Ellen Bryn awoke, unsure of how much time had passed. There was a dull, throbbing pain in her chest. She looked down to find that she was wearing a different set of clothes. "What happened?" "You killed it," Halberd said, standing over her. "Turns out when you shoot these things in their power core, it goes boom." "Big boom," contributed Ngark, peering over Halbad's shoulder. It caught you in the blast, said Celine, who was moving her hands gently across Ellen Bryn's body. You'll be fine in a few. Your armour took the brunt of it, and your eyebrows. Your mohawk may never be the same again. She put a hand to her head, finding a tangle of crisp stumps where her hair had once been. This is why light armour is bollocks, Halbad said. Doesn't do shit. He winked at her. Nice job, though. Our first Max Earth bounty. Only got 1,000 or so more of the bastards to go. Propping herself up on her elbows, Ellen Bryn groaned. Taking down one was hard enough. We got a message. New orders. We're relocating to Fountain University. I'm seeing a big payday in our future, ladies. Let's go hunt some robots. We'll be in the pub by morning. Eric was stood off to one side, examining the smoking remains of the robot. He looked up at the sky, towards the sun, and sighed. We are all going to die. Thanks for listening. You can leave a comment, subscribe, find out loads more over at simonkjones.substack.com.